Hey folks, Tim Slade here from the eLearning Designers Academy. It's just crazy to say this out loud, but we are somehow already well into 2026. It's crazy, I know. But before we get too deep into this new year, I wanted to pause for a hot minute and share a bit about the direction I'm headed this year, and more importantly, the why behind it all. If you've been following my work for any amount of time now, then you might remember that back in September, which honestly doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but it really was. Back in September, I announced that I was ending my hands-on cohort and coaching program, and that the cohort that we kicked off in October would be the last one. And at the time, I shared that I needed space and time to think and time to reflect and time to really consider what should come next. And you know what? I meant all of that because, ending that cohort program wasn't about me choosing to walk away from teaching instructional design or e-learning development. It was actually about creating room to be more intentional, not just about what I build, but how I build it and why I build it. And, I'll tell you, over the past few months, I've done a ton of reflecting about my work and reflecting about my role in this space that is our industry and reflecting about what fills my cup and drains my cup. And in all of that, one idea has been coming to the surface, this idea of connection over content. When I look back at the moments that have been the most rewarding for my work and the moments where I believe that what I was teaching or training had the biggest impact, those moments were never really about content. They weren't about video lessons. They weren't about templates. They weren't about how polished something looks on screen. Instead, they were about connection, about conversations, about working through messy and imperfect problems together, about listening to how completely different people can approach the same challenge in completely different ways. Those are the moments where I believe learning actually sticks. And those are the moments where what I do shines the most and what makes me feel like, I'm actually contributing to the industry and the people within it. And this is where I want to share something I haven't talked about publicly. So I'm going to be a little bit vulnerable here for a moment. That cohort program that I built from the ground up years ago has helped a ton of people. And I know that because I've heard it over and over again from those who have chosen to participate in it. And I'm so very proud of all that we've done. But the way that program was designed and the way we operated it also taught me some important things as well. Here's how the program would work. Students would watch some videos and they would hear my voice and they would see my face and then they would do an assignment and then they would submit that work to me. And then I would get on camera and send detailed video feedback, sometimes multiple times per week. And you know what? Over time, I started to realize something felt off in doing that. Students were building this relationship with me, but I wasn't really on the receiving end of that same energy. And it wasn't that the experience wasn't valuable, because it was, but it was an uneven exchange. And sometimes, when people would message me to say how meaningful or impactful the program was for them, I would feel this really strange mix of pride and guilt. Not because the program wasn't good. It was. I worked my ass off to build a high quality program and I ran it with integrity every step of the way because that's who I am. But I felt guilty because I didn't feel like I was sharing in the experience the same way they were. And that was the first big signal for me that maybe I wanted or maybe I needed to do something differently. And you know what? It was also around that same time I started noticing something else. For years, the core idea behind the eLearning Designers Academy has been a simple one: to help people grow their careers by focusing on skills first. And I still very much believe in that. There's a reason why I end almost all of my YouTube videos by saying that. But, during the pandemic and during the Great Resignation, if we remember all of that, the lines between learning the skills and making career progress started to get blurry. And a lot of people weren't just trying to learn instructional design anymore. They were trying to change jobs and build portfolios and rewrite resumes and prep for interviews, all very real needs. And as I tried to accommodate all of that inside the cohort, the program slowly became kind of a Frankenstein. I'd have days where I'd want to spend time teaching people how to design performance-based learning or how to plan and design scenarios or whatever. But someone else would want to learn what sort of keywords they should add to their resume. Another person would want to focus on how quickly they could turn something into a portfolio piece. And over time, I started to realize something important. Teaching the skills and practice of instructional design and helping people make progress in their careers, those things are deeply connected, but they're not the same. And when you try to fully solve for both at the same time, the skills, the things that are actually important to landing a job in this industry and being successful at the work, those skills can quietly take a backseat to all of the career stuff. And that realization is actually what led me to creating the Instructional Design Career Jumpstart this past fall. It was a way to help get people oriented to understand the industry and the roles and the skills and how portfolios and resumes fit into the bigger picture. And gosh, since we launched it, nearly 1,000 people have gone through it. It's been very successful. I'm so happy for that. But here's the thing that's important to remember. Not everyone who wants to learn instructional design is also looking for a job. Some people just want to get better at the work. Some people want to upskill in the positions that they already have. Some want to understand and learn the practice more deeply before choosing to make a move. And those distinctions matter. Over the last few years, a lot of us have become more disconnected. We're isolated from each other. We're cut off from shared spaces and separated from the kinds of conversations and experiences that actually make learning feel human. And what's filled that gap? Well, a massive explosion of video-based, asynchronous online courses, on-demand everything. Watch this and consume that and move on to the next thing. And you know what? If we fast forward to today and think about what AI is doing to content, we can mass produce content at an unbelievable scale. But if we're being really honest with ourselves, a lot of it is just kind of crappy crap slop, right? More videos, more resources, more information than anyone could realistically use or consume or learn from. But here's the thing that you can't get from an online course, and you definitely can't get from AI. Connection, real conversation, shared thinking, learning alongside other people. And I don't know about you, but personally, I don't want more content in my life. I don't want to sit through more videos. I want more connection with people. And I have a feeling in my bones that I'm not alone in that. So why the heck do I share all of this with you, and what does it mean for what I'm doing and where I'm headed in the future? Well, back in December, I went on one of my annual writing retreats where I lock myself into a hotel room and I do a bunch of writing and reflecting. And, during that time, I decided to look back at the moments in my career where I felt like I was most fulfilled and most impactful to others. And, here's what I realized. Over the last 15 years or so, I have had the opportunity to train and work with L&D and instructional design teams all over the world, from Tiffany & Company to American Express to PetSmart and Nationwide and Estee Lauder, Penske, Capital One, and just about any other company you can name and imagine. And what I've always loved about the work is getting to see how instructional design decisions are actually made in the real world, inside real organizations. I've seen where projects break down, and I've seen what works, and I've seen how much stronger the outcomes are when people are learning and deciding together. It was never about more content. It was about collaboration and discussion and learning how to make decisions as a group. So as I've been thinking about, what's next for the eLearning Designers Academy and for my work more broadly in this industry, I've been asking myself a really simple question. If I were designing the best possible way to learn instructional design today, what would that actually look like? And the answer for me keeps coming back to the same place. It would be live. It would be facilitated. It would be hands-on. It would be human. And it would be centered around people learning together. Not because any of that's easier. Trust me, I've been doing this for years. It's not. And not because it scales better, because it definitely doesn't. But because I genuinely believe it leads to better learning and stronger skills and more confident instructional designers. And if I'm being honest, it's also where I feel most connected to the work and to the people that I'm doing it with. So for now, I'm going to leave you with this. Next Tuesday, I'm announcing the first of several things that I've been working on behind the scenes. So I want you to stay tuned for that. But for now, know this. I'm choosing connection over content. I'm choosing depth over scale. And I'm choosing to design learning the same way I believe it should be experienced. Together. I'll see you around.
On the spaceship, now I'm a space cadet. Big white mansion in my habitat. Aim a lot of sticks like a laser tag. Fuck a rich bitch, having rich set. Smoke a lot of trees, need a weed plant. I did take a lean where the lean at. Sleeping on these G's is a beanbag. Got red going jeans, cause I'm cool, right? Checking from my fan like